Gavin, house instructor. That's me, that is.
People have asked for a video about the show me, tell me questions, and who am I to argue? You can have one. Right, so there is a list of questions that I'm just going to go through. They're in no particular order. Just learn from them. Basically, for the driving test, you have 2 questions that you will be asked. Your first one will be at the beginning of the driving test, and that will be a tell me question. So it'll be just, in theory, how would you do whatever. And then you've got a show me question, which is something that you have to do whilst driving, and you have to be able to do that without crashing into people. So something on the move, basically. All right. Don't worry, as far as my students are concerned, we will go through all of it beforehand, so you will be able to do it. So don't worry about it. It's all common sense at the end of the day. It's all dead easy. But I will explain a little bit of the background behind each of the questions and why we need to know them, etc., and give you a perfectly good answer to the question. So let's crack on with it then. Tell me how you would check the brakes are working before you start a journey. Right, brakes. They are hydraulically operated. All right. So what you've got to think about is basically oil pressure. So if you had a take a syringe, for instance, all right, take 2 syringes and put a rubber tube between them. So as you squish one syringe in, the air would go down the pipe and it would force the other one out the other side. Well, in a car you have the same thing. So when you push the brake pedal, you are pushing oil down a line going to the brake discs at the end, and they clamp like that. Exactly the same as same principle as on a bicycle. So when you pull the lever, it pulls the caliper and the caliper squashes together and it puts the brakes on for you. Right, now if you had a hole in the line, when you push the brake pedal, the oil that's in the line could squirt out the sides, right? So there's no pressure in the system, and therefore when you push the brake pedal, the pedal would just go to the floor of the car. So therefore no signal would get to the brakes themselves, so therefore the brakes wouldn't squish on and then you wouldn't get any braking. So how do we check the brakes are working? First of all, you have to start the car because that powers up the hydraulics. Okay, the engine running powers the system and pressurizes the system. Then you press the brake pedal. Now the question normally is it shouldn't feel spongy or slack, but basically you've got to feel pressure in the system so that you haven't got a hole in it. Now all that's saying is that the signal is getting to the calipers, so the calipers are doing that, but we don't know the quality of the brakes actually at the caliper itself. It is obviously it's a more robust version, but it's very much like the brakes on a bicycle. So on a bicycle you've got the metal backing and then you've got a piece of rubber that touches the wheel itself. Obviously we have other braking material. Rubber would be useless for stopping a car, but you could find that the braking material that actually touches the brakes themselves wears away and then the back part just presses. Now obviously that's just the backing, not the braking material itself. And of course, though we don't know exactly how fast each one's going to wear, you might even get a stone in between the brake pad and the disc itself, so that when you push the brakes like that, only one side touches the disc and the other is held off. So what you can find is that one side brakes more efficiently than the other. And if that happens, what will happen is you'll be driving along and the steering wheel will just go, whoa, it'll pull to the left or the right. Now, if it pulls to the left or the right, it's going to pull in the direction of the good brake because that side slows down quicker than the bad one. So to answer the question, the answer is you start the car, you press the brake pedal, and it shouldn't feel spongy or slack, it should feel normal. Then you drive forward a couple of meters and just brake, and the car should brake in a straight line. That's it. Okay, next one. Tell me where you would find the information for the recommended tyre pressures for the car and how they should be checked. Right, okay. Let's talk about this, shall we? Right, tyres. Tyres are basically balloons. All right, so if you think about a tyre, it has reinforced sidewalls. So here we have a tyre. Now, as you can see, these sidewalls here, that is reinforced. So it's got metal and hessian and all sorts of stuff in it. Then you've got this part, which is the tyre face, and that's where all your tread is. Okay, now, if you imagine, if we sort of had a look like that, what would happen is this bit here on the top, the flat bit, or this bit here, if you can see, the flat bit, when it goes round and touches the floor, we ideally want the same or maximum amount of tyre touching the floor as possible. Because when you put air into the tyre expands, the sidewalls won't really come out very much, but the middle will expand. So if I went and put a lot of air in the tyre, the middle would come out and it would expand. So it's basically, it would do effectively that. Okay, so it would go up, and if I was underinflated, it would fold in like that. Now, obviously, if I had both hands, because I'm a bit tied here, I only have one hand holding the phone, what I want is a flat bit. I don't want it arcing like that, and I also don't want it going flat like that underneath. So, an underinflated tyre, you'll find, oh, thanks Charlie, an underinflated tyre will be that this part, the middle of the part, won't touch the floor. This bit will, and this bit will, but the middle will deflate and will fold in. Therefore, you're only using a small amount of tyre touching the floor. If you overinflate a tyre, then the front, or the middle, sorry, will come out a long way, and therefore you'll only be driving on the middle part. Obviously, the more tyre you have touching the floor, the better grip you will have for accelerating, braking and turning. So having the correct pressure is very important. Now, the amount of pressure that you have in the tyre is based upon the weight over each individual axle. If we actually look at a car, I've got the front axle here and the rear axle over here. Now obviously I've got the engine over the front axle, so there's more weight actually pushing the tyre onto the floor than there is at the back. Now what we have to do is we've got to put the correct amount of pressure in for the tyres. Now if I have a look at my tyre, I don't know if you can see, or you can. According to that, I have 205 55R16s. R meaning radial, which is the type of tyre manufacturer. There was two different types, but it's basically all radial now. 16-inch wheel, so that's that part. And then I've got a 205, which is the 205 millimeters, which is how wide it is between here and here. And then 55 there, and 55 means it's 55% of the width. So I mean, you know, how complicated can you make it? We've got millimeters, percentage, type of it, and 16 inches. I mean, come on, unbelievable. Right, anyway, so now I know what size tyre I have on my car. You can work out how much air you have to have in there based upon the weight that is pressing down on each individual axle. Now, some people say to you that it says the air pressure on the side of the car. Normally it's written on the side here, something like that. That is the maximum pressure that that tyre can take before it explodes. The manufacturer doesn't know what tyre that wheel is going to go on, and so therefore it just gives you a maximum before it blows up. That doesn't mean it's the correct pressure for the tyre, it just means that's what it's not going to blow up at. Right, now, okay, so you'll probably have to twist your head a bit here, but here's a sticker on the inside of my door. Over here I've got size of tyres, and it says what size engine you've got in your car, and it says 1 to 3 people or 4 to 5, and these two figures are for the front wheel and these two figures are for the rear wheel, and then it says in here the pressures that you need. As you can see, for the rear let's take the middle figure, 41 psi, pounds per square inch. That's what most things measure on. And 35 psi, if you can see that, for the rear. And that depends upon, sorry, for the front. That's what that is. So what we've got here is it's saying if you've got a lot of luggage in the back, then you need 35 psi on the front axle, but you're going to need 41 on the rear axle, because obviously when you put weight in a car, at the back of a car, it's going to press down a lot more. A lot of the weight that you put into a car won't really affect the front too much, because it's already got a lot of weight over the front axle anyway. You'll also see here that the front axle doesn't really change if you've got small amounts of people in it. So it's really important that when you have the correct amount of, well, it is very important that you have the correct amount of pressure in the tyre for the weight in the car, because that will compress the tyres more into the floor, and if they were getting saggy because of all the weight, you'd have to put extra air in to re-inflate them. But equally, if when the weight gets out, you'll be over-inflated, in which case you'll only run in the middle of the tyre, so you should then reduce the tyre pressure down again. See what I mean? Now, if it's only once in a blue moon, I wouldn't worry about it, but if you were going to do lots of driving, then you do need the correct pressure in the tyre. And that's just purely to get the right amount of tyre surface. Okay, so the question is, how do we check our tyres? Right, now, this little sticker on the door is just a quick reference for my particular car. The answer to the question is in the owner's manual. Where would you find it? It's in the owner's manual. It's in every single owner's manual, but you only get a quick reference on some cars. So therefore, just reply that. Right, now, where would you find it? Right, so we found out what size tyre. We've looked it up in the owner's manual, well, sticker, and it tells me what pressure I need. Right, now, down here, you have a dust cap. So I unscrew that. And over here, I have a pressure gauge. And then I push it on, and then you saw there that the end popped out. And it currently says that I have 31 psi. Oops, well, helps if you look at it. 31 psi, which you could then cross-refer to the book. Which I can't remember off the top of my head now. I think it says 31, didn't it? Yeah, there you go, 31. There you go. Sorted. Right, do bear in mind that this is a cold tyre pressure. When a car is driving along the road, the tyres will warm up, the air inside therefore expands, and the pressures go up. By law, you must have at least the pressure in the book, so therefore it needs to be at a cold pressure. So normally within 2 miles of driving from your house, that's still considered a cold tyre pressure. Tell me how you would ensure your head restraint is correctly adjusted. Right, now, the question before you is, how do we make sure our head restraint is correctly adjusted so it provides the best protection in the event of a collision? Well, what you've got to do is actually go historical on this one. If you think back to the cars of the 50s and 60s, we didn't used to have head restraints. What you used to have was seats like this, but without this bit. Right, so your head would be back here. Now, in the event of a collision, if somebody smashes into the back of your car, the car shoots forward. But your head weighs about 12 pounds. Think of 10-pin bowling, all right? So the 12 ball, that's how much heavy your head weighs. So what happens is, we get a sort of if I can get a side profile, there you go. So what happens is the car shoots forward, your head goes back like this. Now you saw there that my head hit the head restraint, but if I didn't have a head restraint, it would have flopped over the back of the seat and then snapped back. And what it does is it tears all the connecting tissues that keep your head on, basically. That's why when people have got whiplash, they have to wear that foam collar whilst everything grows back on so that their head stays on. So the answer to the question is this should be the same height, so top of your head to the top of the head restraint, or eyes and ears to middle, but you also want a small gap. If you see that, a small gap between your head and the head restraint. The reason for that is we don't want you just doing that when you're driving. We do want you animated when you're looking around, but it needs to be nearby to catch your head. Now obviously in this instance the head restraint is higher than my head, but it's okay because it will catch my head. So officially it should be top to top, or eyes and ears to middle, or as near as you can get it. We don't want it below the head. That's when it becomes dangerous. As long as it catches your head, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Next, tell me how you would check your tyres to ensure they have sufficient tread depth and that their general condition is safe to use on the road. Right, for that we use a tread depth gauge. All right. Out of interest, that pressure gauge and tyre pressure gauge, got the both from a well-known car place beginning with an H for £7. I think Amazon sell them as well. Right, so let's have a look here. This is tread. Okay, now the idea of tread is, if you look at it from, if this was the surface of the road here, if you've got water on the road, the water rushes into the gaps and gets squirted out of the sides, you see, so it goes in there and gets fired out. The more tread you have, the more water can be dissipated and got out of the way, and therefore the rubber itself touches the floor. If you had low tread, then the water can't really get into these gaps, and it's exactly the same principle as when you're skimming stones. So when you fire a stone across the water, if it hits the water too fast and the water hasn't got time to get out of the way, then it just deflects the stone off the surface. So what happens to a tyre when you hit a puddle at high speed, if the water can't get out of the way fast enough, you float on the water, and that's known as aquaplaning, and the car will skid all over the place and you might crash into something. So as tyres are the only things that touch you to the floor, they are the most important part of your car. The law currently states that if you have defective tyres on your car, you can be up for 3 points and £2,500 fine per tyre. So you could be up for a £10,000 fine and 12 points on your licence if you have 4 defective tyres. It is therefore imperative that you make sure you always have good tyres. The law states that the legal minimum tread depth on a tyre is 1.6 millimetres, which isn't very much at all, frankly. On my gauge, don't know if you can see that, but on my gauge it says 1.6 mil. It's only a really small amount, actually, very small. When you buy a new tyre, it comes with about 8 or 9 mil. But what happens is, as you drive along, you wear that tread down. So the law states you must have at least 1.6 mil in the central 3/4. Right, so we look at the tyre itself. You've got the whole width there. The central 3/4 is about that part, if you see on my tyre. So the central 3/4 must have at least 1.6 mil all the way around, so around the entire circumference. So that's the answer. How do you take your tyres? You'd use a tread depth gauge. What you do is you actually put it in the hole like that, and then you push the outside down, take it out, and we can see that my tyre has about 6.5 mil, so it's fine. When you are driving around, you could hit potholes, get cuts, bulges, because the side wall of a tyre has got metal in it. If you bend a piece of metal, it normally goes back to the original shape, but if you bend it far enough, it then stays kinked. Now if you were to hit a pothole at high speed with low pressure in your tyres, there's not enough resistance in the air to stop the tyre from compressing. You could then bend that metal that's in the tyre. What it then looks like, you get a weak spot on your tyre and you get these big bulges that come out the side of the tyres. You now have a weak tyre that could blow out if you're on the motorway, so you're looking for any cuts or bulges or anything like that. And if you've got anything like that, get it checked out, get them off the car. Right, tell me how you check the headlights and tail lights are working. Now remember, these are all tell me questions. You don't actually have to do it, but I'll show you how to do it anyway. Right, so I'm going to power up my car, so I'm just going to press the power button. Car is alive. Right, so down here at the bottom, so let me just see down here on the right hand side in my car, it varies from car to car. You've got side lights there, and then you've got driving lights there. That's the auto. Oh, shush car. So I go 1, 2, that puts my headlights on, and that does headlights and tail lights. So I think that's what it said. Check my headlights and tail lights are working. Right, fine. So I've done that. Now just get out of the car. Can't be that hard, can it? Right, now let's have a look at my car. I've got up here, these are day running lights, but they are the equivalent of side lights. I've also got this one on the headlight, so that's lit. When I come over here, and that's lit there, and my day running lights are on as well. And then I run round to the back of the car like a gazelle, and I can see that that is lit, and that is lit. Good. So there we go. Headlights and taillights are working. So the answer is switch them on, get out, have a look. Tell me how you would know if there is a problem with your anti-locking braking system. Right. Anti-locking braking system is when the car detects that the car is skidding. So there are sensors on each of the wheels that tell it how fast that wheel is going round. If, within tolerance, because there does have to be some tolerance, the car detects that some wheels are travelling a lot slower than another wheel, like if you put the brakes on and the front ones lock up, then it tells the computer that there is a problem with it, and then the hydraulic braking system then comes in and it pumps the brakes like that. It goes boom, 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 boom. You get skid, steer, skid, steer. Now, the advantage of this, again, the reason why we have ABS is from historical purposes. In ye olde bad days, so I'm talking probably 80s back, when you whacked on a brake, you would stop the wheels of the car. Now, if the wheels aren't physically rotating, they can't go anywhere. I mean, you could turn them any way you like, but they need to be actually rotating to go to a new location. If your wheels are locked up, then you are just going to skid in the direction you were last travelling. And the problem was that most accidents occur as something comes out from a side road, so like a child runs out into the road. Now, child runs out in the road. In the olden days, we whacked on the brake pedal, the brakes would lock up, the car would skid, and we would still hit the child, but just with lots of smoke. So what we had to do is cadence braking, and that's where you ease off on the brake pedal to get the tyres rotating again, or some people used to pump the brakes, so it sort of rotated and then locked and rotated and locked. And what that gave you was the ability to steer a bit when the wheels were rotating, but you still had to brake to try and stop. ABS does that real quick. It goes like this. So if you ever see a skid mark on the road, it's lots of little bits of black on the surface. That's ABS has kicked in. Now, because it's purely electronic sensing, If that were to break and there's, for some reason, like a fuse is blown or something, then we wouldn't know about it because we're not using the system unless in an emergency. So what you actually get is a warning light on the dashboard. So if I show you my dashboard, I'm just going to, when you turn on a car, it does a diagnostic. Over here it says ABS. Don't know if you can say, oh, shut up. Right, it's gone out because there isn't a problem. But what would happen is at any time, if you get an orange light that comes on and it says ABS, then there is a problem with your anti-locking braking system. Tell me how you would check the direction indicators are working. Right, again, dead simple. Fire up the car, put an indicator on. So we just go, put the indicator on, I can fire up the car. Then you get out, and you go and have a look. And I go, yep, that's blinking. I've got one there in my door, and then I've got one on the back, there. Then you get in and do the other side. So I've just put the other indicator on now. I go around here, yes, that's blinking. That isn't, and that one is. That's annoying. Well, in that case, I will go get a light bulb and put it in. But this is why we do the diagnostics. There you go. No sooner said than done. I have got replacement light bulbs. Job done. Tell me how we check the brake lights are working on this car. Right, now we need somebody looking at the brake lights, so the easy thing to do is have a friend. You could then fire up the car, put your foot on the brake pedal, and the brake lights will come on. They can then check to make sure you've got your 2 on the sides and the high level brake light working. Alternatively, you could reverse up to something like the side of a car. I mean, where I live, out here where I come in at night time, I reverse onto the driveway, so I can normally, in the side back of that car in front of us, I can normally see when I put my foot on the brake pedal that all brake lights are working and that the reversing lights are working, and also on and so forth. So reflection works very, very well. But alternatively, just to get a friend to help you with that. I've also been known to put a brick on it and just get out and have a look. Okay. Tell me how you would check the power assisted steering is working before you start a journey. Right, simple. Now, as I grab hold of this steering wheel, oh god, it's really difficult to steer. So, if I now start the car, now the steering is really easy. Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. And that's how you do it. So you steer with the engine off, and it should be heavy. Steer with the engine on, it should be a lot easier. Tell me how you would switch on your rear fog lights and explain when you would use them. Right, on my car, it varies from car to car, but on my car I have to turn the headlights to 2, and then the fog light button is that one. and you can see on the dashboard when I press it, I've got my yellow light down there. There you go, I'll make it flash. That's how you would turn them on. And when can you use them? You can only use fog lights when visibility is less than 100 meters. So think about when we were at school, we used to do the 100-meter dash. All right. Yeah, it's not when it's foggy. All right, it's 100 meters. You need to be able to regurgitate that to the examiner. Right, tell me how you would switch on your headlights from dipped to main beam. Right, now I'll now turn my fog lights off. Now this varies from car to car. I have got my headlights on. In my car, the indicator stalk is where you always do it. So if you ever wanted to flash your headlights, you always pull the indicator stalk, and you saw a blue light on the dashboard there. In my car, and it varies from car to car, you just push it forward. Now I've got a blue light on the dashboard. To switch that off, I either pull it or push it to switch them off again. So tell me how you switch your headlights from dipped to main beam. Well, that was dipped. Main beam is there pushing it forward, and you know it's on because you've got a blue light. And to prove it, there it is again. Hurrah! Okay. Next one, open the bonnet and tell me how you check it has sufficient oil. That's because my lights are on. Okay, now let's have a look at this. Right. Okay, so in my car, I've got a bonnet release down here on the left hand side. So I pull that, and then you go round to the bonnet, and down here, there you see, there's a little yellow lever. So I have to pull that and lift the bonnet with the other hand. Then I've got a yellow bonnet holder thing, release, I can't think what they're called, and I take it out. So I took it out from there and I put it in that hole at the top, which is there, so you get a sense of scale. And there's the bonnet release. So you would just pull that, lift the bonnet up and put it into there. Next, how do we check the engine oil? Right, now for the driving test, you don't need to actually physically do this, you just need to know how to do it. All right, so this is your dipstick. Right, now you take the dipstick out. Currently it has oil all over it. Right, especially as I just started the car, it's been splashed around. So all you've got to do is wipe that oil off. Then, with the engine off and on a flat bit of road, you put this thing back in again, then you take it out and you read where it is. And it should be between, oops, hello, just drop it. It should be between minimum and maximum. Okay. If, yeah, and you push it back in. If you were low, then this is where you fill up. So you just unscrew that and you would put more oil in, but a little bit at a time. Next, you've got engine coolant. Now, this is my engine coolant, and as you can see here, it's got a max and a minimum on it. It's got for expansion, so when it heats up, it expands. That's why it's not on there. I'm also not on a flat at the moment as well. And then you've also got hydraulic brake fluid. Now this is for your power assisted steering and your brakes, and again you can see it's got minimum and maximum. Sometimes you can't actually see it, you have to wobble it to try and see it. It doesn't really show up on my phone. Okay, so I'm back. Somebody rudely phoned me halfway through filming, so it cut off. Just so you know, this is the washer bottle for the washer jets for the window when you squirt water. So that's how you do it. So you only need to know how to do stuff. You don't actually have to physically do anything for the driving test itself. And then you put the bonnet back down. So you just hold the bonnet up with one hand, you take that out of there, put it back in the clip, and you take the bonnet down. And then you can either just put your hand in the middle and push it, and we want it nice and flush like that, or you could sort of hold it up here and let go, not from too high though. Okay, so that's those. There. Right, now you also need to be able to do stuff whilst you're driving. So these are the show me questions. These are the ones that you use when you're physically driving down the road. Okay, so notice it says when it's safe to do so. Right, very important, it's when it's safe to do so. So if you currently are driving along dealing with a bicycle or coming up to a roundabout, deal with that first. All right, only do the thing that the examiner asks you to do when it's safe. That's part of the test, is do you do it when it's safe, or do you just try to crash just because you want to open a window? So do be mindful of that. Right, so next, can you show me how you clean the rear windscreen? Right, so I'm just going to start the car purely because my car beeps and bings and does all sorts of stuff. Right, now here's my windscreen wiper lever. Let me get the steering wheel out of the way. Right, so here's my lever here. Right, so it's just purely, in my car, and it does vary from car to car, you move it away from the window you want to clean. So I'm just going to push it forward. So the whole thing just goes forward, and you will see that I am squirting water and my wipers are going. Now I've just released it and it's still wiping. It's going to wipe about 3 or 4 times. Done. Next, show me how you clean the front window. Right, so the front window is, again, move it away from the window. So this time I'm just going to pull it towards me. As you can see, it's cleaning the window. Again, I've released the button, it's still wiping. It gives me about 3 wipes after. Good. Oh, and then freaks out, but that's only because I've got rain sensing wipers on this car. I'll switch that off. Right, okay. Show me how you switch on your dipped headlights. We already know that. That's, oops, hello, that's down there. So that's that. Again, all you've got to do, you'll be driving along the road like this. You can either look through, but the key is you've got to look at the road and then look down and then look at the road and do that, and you just extend your hand. Alternatively, just feel for it, because you know it's down there anyway. Just feel for it. Set the rear demister. Right, down here. That is the rear demister, that is the front demister. Do bear in mind that rectangles, as that is the universal symbol for rear. That shape is supposed to represent the windscreen in 2 dimensions. If you think about it, a windscreen is narrower 2-dimensionally. See, look, it's narrower at the bottom here than it is at the top. Up here. Yeah, so it's narrow at the bottom and it's got a curve on it, and that's what that symbol is supposed to represent, which is, you can also see on the windscreen wiper lever actually. There you go. So that symbol tells me for the front windscreen, if I go down, I get a wipe all the time my fingers are on it, then it goes back to off. Then in the middle I've got the little broken line, means that it's going to wipe every so often. So what I do is I push it up 1 click and it will wipe, and then it switches off. Now my car has got rain sensing wipers, and this wheel here decides how sensitive that rain sensor is. Okay, if I then go up 1 click, I'm now on this one, so that means they're on. And if I go up again, then they're on fast. All right, but I don't want that. I'm just going to turn it down to there. Okay, good. Right, you can see on the end here that this is the rectangle, which means rear ones, and purely all I do is I just push the end in at the top. So as I go in like that, that's now the back wiping, and then that's permanent. So if we go, there you go, it's permanently going, and then if I go back to that, it will wipe, and then every 10 seconds or so it'll then wipe. So if we just wait, there you go, it's every 5 seconds, fine, and then back off. But to actually clean the windows is just move the lever, so I go forward for the back window, pull it for the front window. Right, horn, that's the next one. How do I operate the horn? Right, now the horn in my car, and it does vary from car to car, is all of this, right, including this bit. And the way it works is all of that, and it sort of hinges around the middle. There's actually a metal ring in the background here, being held off another metal ring on a spring in the middle. So actually, if you have to push the whole thing really hard, or the further you are from centre, the more sensitive it gets, so you would actually push that to beep the horn. I'm not going to, because it'll scare my cat, but that's how you do it. So you basically just press the middle any point, and open and close a side window. Right, so on my car, on the driver's door, we have these, and what you've got is basically looking at the window winders from above the car. So that is my seat, front passenger, and then you've got the rear left, rear right. Now all it is to open and close, you just push down and the window goes down, and then you just lift all the way and it will go up. Now you don't need to do it all the way, just a little bit and back up is absolutely fine. You just need to be able to demonstrate that you can basically feel for it and then do it. You don't even have to look at it, you just put your hand out and just go, oh yeah, just feel where they are and do the window up and down. It's dead easy, but you still got to be watching what you're doing when you're driving around. Good, and that I believe is it. There you go.